Swinging for a tight spot in the postseason.
And it's hit high and deep to left center field. And it's gone.
The wild card race in the American League comes to the Rogers Center. How the Jays could not capitalize against Texas on momentum following a winning weekend.
Finally, it's happening.
Plus, a new timeline. The feds revised the licenses of all major telephone carriers to ensure customers have cell service on the subway when the new rules will help you underground.
Poured all this money into it, and then they tried to block you from finding out how much money they poured into it.
And CBC Toronto uncovers the cost of battling to release Doug Ford's marching orders to cabinet ministers. We'll add up those legal fees and show you how people are reacting to the letters now that they have been made public. Good evening, I'm Chris Glover. Welcome to our viewers in Ottawa tonight. There was so much hype heading into tonight's Blue Jays game after sweeping Kansas this weekend, but tonight was not the start against the Rangers that the Jays were hoping for. Toronto lost 10-4 against Texas, and this series against the Rangers is key for both teams, each battling for a spot in the American League wildcard series. Anam Khan joins us live at the Rogers Center tonight. And Anam, after a big winning weekend, a tough loss tonight, but things are far from over from here.
Yes, so right now, the Blue Jays hold the second wild card spot right now. And going into the game, they were ahead of the Rangers, but they need to split the season in order for a chance to make it to the playoffs. And fans obviously know how important that is. It's the beginning of a pivotal series for the Blue Jays at home, playing 4 games against the Texas Rangers. Both teams in the hunt for the American League wildcard series, and Jays fans can feel the tension.
Oh, it's a big deal because we have to beat Texas Ranger to keep the wild card.
I'm very stressed.
Not really.
Stressed.
No,
I couldn't sleep last night.
Even true love can't come between the competition.
Jays sweep the series.
Texas sweep. Texas sweep through and through.
The series is the biggest of the season for both teams, and going in, even the players felt the pressure.
They're right behind us, obviously. They have a ton of great players, so it's going to be tough, and we've got to win every game, every possible game we can from this point on.
When you're playing a team head-to-head that you're right there with, I mean, it's no secret we're neck and neck, and we've been kind of flip-flopping over the last little bit, so I think for us it's a big 4-game series.
But players and fans have faith in the Jays.
Babe Schneider, he's going to have the game of his life. What Merrifield's going to turn it on?
Vladdy's
going to have a day? Vladdy? Bassett's going to have a great game as well. It's going to be a great day for Jays fans.
Experts say the Jays don't have to win the series. Even if they split it, winning 2 of 4, they'd be in good shape. While the Rangers won just 3 of their last 10 games, the Jays won their last 4 series and swept Kansas City over the weekend.
I think Toronto is the better team than Texas, so it helps that there's infighting, and that AL West division is really, really competitive. But as far as statements go, I think if the Blue Jays carry the momentum from the weekend sweep, they can win 3 of 4. They can sweep this series. I think if a sweep would guarantee them a playoff berth.
So the games will be going on every single day until Thursday, and Blue Jays fans, they're not losing hope. They're excited to be here every single day to watch and cheer their home team.
Yeah, people will be watching all week for sure. Anam Khan reporting live for us tonight from Rogers Center. Major news tonight for subway riders set to get cell service underground in less than a month. The federal government came to Toronto's City Hall today to make the announcement. It is forcing telecom companies to ensure mobile services for all subway riders, regardless of provider. Ali Chiasson has more on the tough talk and how Canadian telecom giants are responding tonight.
It has been 10 years in the making.
In Canada's largest city, it is simply unacceptable that so many subway riders still do not have access to wireless services. I'm here today to tell you that those days are over.
The feds will be revising the licenses of all major carriers to ensure that customers have cell service along the TTC subway system, and they have a strict timeline to adhere to.
Finally, it's happening. October 3rd.
That's when all carriers must offer voice, text, and data along the current wireless network, which right now is just along the lower U part of the subway system between St. George, Union Station, and Bloor-Yonge, as well as between Kiel and Castle Frank and Spadina and DuPont. Right now, it's only accessible to Rogers customers. From there,
we want them to cover 100% of all the station within 6 months. We want them to cover 80% of the tunnels within a year, and we want them to cover 100% of the tunnels in the subway within 3 years.
Neither Rogers, TELUS, nor Bell have come to an agreement, and since they own the existing infrastructure, Rogers says they welcome the federal government's intervention. Bell and TELUS have been dragging their heels, and the federal government is now forcing them to work with us in earnest to make connectivity possible for all riders. And while we have been busy building, they've been busy whining.
I would say an abomination. It's absurd.
It will be hard to know who to fine if deadlines aren't met.
If the rule was that Rogers was going to be fined for not letting Bell and TELUS in, then Bell and TELUS would say, well, we'd like to use the infrastructure and the price we're willing to pay is zero. It's kind of a strange situation.
I'm not the type of guy you want to mess with. I think they've figured that out. But above that, they don't want to mess with millions of Torontonians.
Tough talk for the telcos. I mean, this is about more than just a convenience thing. It's more than just a nice to have to be able to text your friend while you're riding the subway. It's also a public safety thing. If something happens underground, you want to be able to call for help. And I feel like a lot of us thought we would have had this years ago. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
Looking live at Toronto's harbor front, 20 degrees right now, heading to a low of 16. Colette is here now with a first look at the weather forecast. And Colette, a pretty nice September day today.
Yeah, that's right, Chris. A really good-looking day. And then there were those few areas kind of in the afternoon with the spotty showers, really because of the lake breeze, that boundary that kind of sets up. But most cases, it was a good-looking day. 23 degrees, the high for Toronto, 24 there, Hamilton and Peterborough, Kingston, even up to 25. But we have this system that's moving in, and so those clouds have become thicker, that rain developing through the overnight. A few embedded thunderstorms even possible in here, so tonight you might get a rumble of thunder. So the morning commute, I would anticipate this is a bit more organized and a more significant rainfall, and then it kind of moves through, and once it does for the second half of the day, it breaks up. We'll get some sun coming through, just some spotty showers kind of left behind, and things then will improve further into the evening. But no, it might be a little breezy at times, and that cooler air is going to be filtering in behind this system. So it'll take some time to get here. 17 the low tonight, that's a mild overnight, and Chris, the high tomorrow, 21.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Colette. It was another active day today out of Queen's Park. Long fought for mandate letters from the start of the Ford government's 2018 term were leaked today. In a moment, we'll reveal what they say and how opposition parties are reacting. But first, the government has fought every order to make them public all the way to the Supreme Court. Tonight, exclusive reporting from CBC Toronto uncovers how many hours provincial lawyers worked to try to keep the letters secret. Mike Crawley digs in.
I, Doug Ford. The Premier and his cabinet at their swearing in a year ago. Doug Ford's ministers all have mandate letters, marching orders that set out his government's priorities.
Thank you, ministers. Please be seated.
In 2018, after Ford's first cabinet was sworn in, CBC News asked for those mandate letters under Ontario's Freedom of Information laws. For 5 years, Ford's government has fought to keep them secret. The government refused to release the letters, saying they would reveal cabinet discussions. 3 straight legal decisions rejected that argument. How much time did the province's crown attorneys devote to those cases? CBC News asked 2 years ago, and the government refused to say.
You know, and they poured all this money into it, and then they tried to block you from finding out how much money they poured into it. It's just the wrong-headed approach on the part of any government in a democratic society.
But recently, the government relented and divulged the answer. More than 1,600 hours of lawyer time. That's 209 8-hour workdays and that only includes the time before its appeals were heard.
It's astonishing. Imagine what they could have done with the money that they have wasted just to prevent Ontarians from having the answers that they want.
It's astounding the time and effort the government put into this. And it didn't do anything to help anybody other than the Premier.
A spokesperson for Ford's Attorney General says, quote, "The number of hours worked on this case are not unusual for a matter that is now before the Supreme Court of Canada." Yet now, after all that fight, the letters are being revealed. Global News reports it obtained the letters from a source not authorized to release them. We asked the government if it's investigating the leak. The Premier's spokespeople have yet to respond. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
Now turning to the actual content of the letters and how opposition parties are reacting, let's get to Lorenda Redekop.
This victory belongs to the people.
The letters obtained by Global News show Premier Doug Ford repeated his election slogan from that first term. He also repeats election promises and says he personally will hold ministers accountable. The Green Party leader says that doesn't hold up to Ford's government this term.
His mandate letter clearly said he was going to hold ministers accountable. He failed to do that when it came to the $8.3 billion Greenbelt giveaway.
As for the whodunit, after all these years of secrecy, the interim Liberal leader thinks the leak could be from the Premier's office itself.
When I saw it, the first thing I thought is, they're really piling on this morning trying to distract from that $8.3 billion backroom deal.
It is a fool's errand to try and figure it out.
Jamie Watt, with the strategy firm Navigator, helped write mandate letters while he worked in government.
That's a much more limited group would have access to all of them. I don't know for sure in this case, but certainly the Premier's access, where they write them, they'd have access to all of them. And then sometimes central agencies would as well.
He says that could include people in the Ministries of Finance, the Treasury Board, and the Attorney General's office. As for the impact within the Ford government going forward,
everybody looks around that table and says, Brenna, was it you? Was it you? And everyone starts second guessing everybody. That is the damage of a leak.
he says that leads to more privacy, with decisions made by a smaller group. The Ford government has so far not responded to CBC to a request for comment. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
Leaving politics now, and a 28-year-old man from the UK is facing a second-degree murder charge after a fatal assault on King West last month. The victim has been identified as 38-year-old Brett Sheffield from Manitoba. He suffered critical injuries after he was assaulted near King and Portland on the evening of August 28th. He died in hospital 2 days later. Meanwhile, police have identified a woman stabbed to death in Cabbagetown over the weekend. 36-year-old Crystal Brown Pelland is the city's 48th homicide victim of the year. There is no word yet on a... Welcome back. The trial got underway today of a man accused of killing 4 members of a Muslim family in London. Nathaniel Veltman was in court today facing 4 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of attempted murder, and terrorism charges. And while he has pleaded not guilty, Veltman is accused of deliberately ramming a truck into a family out for an evening walk in London. 4 members of the Afzal family died in the incident more than 2 years ago. The trial has been moved to Windsor, but the reason why cannot be released due to a pub ban. According to the Crown, Veltman admitted he'd planned the attack for 3 months. Prosecutors allege he targeted the family because of their faith. The trial is expected to last 8 weeks. We've told you about Toronto's struggle to keep up with an overflowing shelter system. It is a problem being dealt with right across the province. In Durham Region, officials are planning on converting an old Whitby nursing home. But as Olivia Bowden tells us, the plan is getting mixed reviews.
Durham Region is turning this former nursing home near Dundas and Thixon into a homeless shelter. And these neighbors aren't happy about that.
Just completely shocked, with no consultation, nothing. I felt ambushed in some ways or sidelined.
There was no transparency at all. And in fact, we all found out by word of mouth.
Residents say they weren't properly informed about the plan. They say they were invited to attend a meeting last month where they were told the shelter was going ahead. They say they're worried about their kids' safety and property values.
basically the neighborhood where it's situated is a family neighborhood. It's an established neighborhood, lots of schools in the neighborhood, daycares, parks. I just don't think it melts together well.
Durham Region officials say it's an innovative solution and part of their plan to help get people off the street. Lisa McIntosh coordinates homeless services for Durham, where, like Toronto, shelters are at capacity.
Most nights in Durham, there are no shelter beds available. We are seeing people who are families living in vehicles. And so finding solutions that really do move across communities in Durham is a necessity.
$13.7 million in funding to buy 1635 Dundas was approved in June and announced in August. And McIntosh says the region is still consulting with residents, but they need to understand these are people who deserve to be part of their neighborhoods. They plan to house 45 people, many of them families.
Which puts them right where they should be, in a community with space to live and to work and to be part of that community.
And local politicians say they need help from provincial and federal governments. John Henry, the regional chair of Durham, says resources have been exhausted.
It's sad that municipal government has to step up and deal with the issues of mental health, homelessness, addictions, when the other levels of government seem to be absolutely absent.
Henry is asking residents to work with the region on the shelter, which doesn't have a firm opening date. Olivia Bowden, CBC News, Toronto.
Meanwhile, back in Toronto, public health and the city's school boards are asking for more help in dealing with student mental health. A report found more than half of students were depressed about the future, and a third said the pandemic made their mental health worse. Dale Manukduk explains tonight's call for help.
A report presented at Toronto's Board of Health today looked at the health of children and youth after the COVID-19 pandemic, specifically their mental health.
Unfortunately, what we've seen is that a significant proportion of our young people, almost 50% in fact, described that they were having moderate to severe concerns in respect of their mental health.
Prior to being elected to council last year, Board of Health Chair Chris Moyes was a trustee with the TDSB and saw a decline firsthand.
Students were actually behaving erratically. They were not really socializing well with one another. There was an increase in violence in schools, an increase in sexual assaults. I think, it's all compounded.
The report also found food insecurity having an impact on mental health for young people, and that 1 in every 5 Toronto households experienced that last year.
You can see how a vicious cycle can emerge. Families, parents are stressed about being able to put food on the table. That creates household stress. For a child themselves, recognizing that they're hungry has direct impact on their ability to learn.
A separate report stressed the need for a national school food policy. The board is also recommending council ask the province to help school boards deal with mental health. When asked about supports, the Ministry of Education pointed to a $114 million investment in mental health for this school year, a more than 500% increase from 2018. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Health is funding youth wellness hubs across the province. This one in Thorncliffe Park opened in July. The hubs look at mental health in a holistic approach and offer rapid walk-in service to people aged 12 to 25.
If we don't provide support immediately, what happens is the consequences, the negative impacts of those difficulties expand and start to disrupt multiple aspects of their lives, like their school progress, their relationships at home, their relationships with peers.
To mark the new school year, the hub is having an open house on October 12th so families can learn more about mental health programming. Dale Manukduk, CBC News, Toronto.
Last word on this Monday night to Colette. And Colette, I know that you're tracking some extreme weather in the tropics.
Yeah, Chris, here we are at the absolute peak of the hurricane season for the Atlantic Basin, and 2 hurricanes to speak of. So today, Margot, that strengthened from a tropical storm, became a hurricane. And then we've been talking about this since last week, even before that, back when it was a disturbance. So Hurricane Lee, really important to watch the track with this one as it may eventually have an impact on Atlantic Canada. Now, that's still a long ways out. Today, the Canadian Hurricane Center put out their first sort of official statement about this. Likely to stay a major hurricane for a while yet, and then it'll get over some of that cooler water, and as it does, it will weaken somewhat, and then as it continues, likely to track northward, that's when we should see it weaken further to perhaps being just barely a hurricane or tropical storm force as it moves towards Atlantic Canada. We'll keep watching because that can still change in terms of that trajectory. We do have this rain moving through in the overnight hours, a few spotty thunderstorms in here as well, more organized in the morning hours, and then it becomes more of a scattered shower situation into the afternoon and even some sunny breaks developing, a little breezy behind that, and some cooler air moves in. So isolated shower not out of the question even on Wednesday, but that's more for southwestern Ontario. Otherwise, more of a mix of sun and cloud, and that cooler air as it filters down towards the end of the week, we'll get into some chillier nights and likely start to see some single digits. So maybe appreciate the milder overnight that we have for tonight, and tomorrow is still a decent daytime high, especially depending how much sun breaks out into the afternoon. That could enhance that temperature, 21 degrees. Wednesday, a little cooler at 19, and there you go. You see what happens with those overnight numbers as we get towards the end of the week, but a lot of sunshine to go around then too, Chris.
Well, that's good. All right, thanks, Colette. Have a great night. And that's our show for you tonight. Thank you so much for watching. Marivelle Tarouk has your next local newscast tomorrow at 6. And remember, you can get caught up anytime on our website. Just head to cbc.ca/Toronto. And I'll see you